Are there connections and perhaps intersection between Korean American Day and Martin Luther King Day? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Jeff, middle high school teacher, instructional coach, civic lead, and teacher educator. Our Ed Family YT channel is all about helping students to find out what they're good at so that they can do good with it. And today I want to discuss if there is any intersectionality between Korean American Day and Martin Luther King Day. I don't think this is a connection many people think about, but I think you'll find it definitely worth thinking about today. Just the other day, I created a video on January 13th, Korean American Day, and I'll put the link in the description. And I want to share some good news. I had sent that video, actually, the video link, to California Representative Stephen Choi, who is one of the representatives for the state of California and the author of this resolution, along with Representative Quirk Silva. So as I emailed him, I actually got a response the following day, and he had received my email, that he had received my email and video, and also sent me back these historic photos of ACR 111 proposing a California Day in California and passing in our state 65-0. So as I read ACR 111 on Korean American Day, as I read that entire resolution, it almost felt like I was reading the history of Korean Americans, beginning with the first immigrants and also discussing some of the barriers experienced. Now, I think we've all seen pictures of that sign, whites only. And it's hard to believe that that was a part of our American story not so long ago. And I'm reminded that those signs did not just apply to African Americans, but also other people of color, including Asian Americans, including Korean Americans. When you see this picture here of American-born Dr. Sammy Lee, two-time Olympic platform diving champion. First of all, he was the first Asian American man to win an Olympic gold medal for the United States. And secondly, he was the first man in the entire world to win back-to-back gold medals in Olympic platform diving. So the interesting story around this, though, is when he practiced diving, he actually only had one day during the week when he could practice. It was actually the day before the pool was cleaned up, because on the other days he couldn't use the swimming pool. It was for members only, for whites only. And this treating of other for people of color was not just, we're not just talking about swimming pools here, right? Water fountains, restaurants, buses, schools, jobs, even people of different races couldn't intermarry. This may be hard for some of us to imagine today, but at one time in our history, it was law. Then there were those among them who pushed back, and one among them was the son of a Baptist minister, also a pastor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you watch videos of what it was like before the civil rights and during the civil rights movement, you'll see a lot of violence toward people of color. Martin Luther King Jr. cared deeply about what was happening, and he did something about it. He was known for pushing back against racism in his generation, but not in a violent way, rather in a non-violent way. And he did so out of great compassion for others, even when he was arrested, when he was threatened, his family was threatened. I've always thought it takes so much courage to stand up against racism. I think about Abraham Lincoln, who pushed back against racism, assassinated. President John F. Kennedy, who was president in 1961, right in the middle of the civil rights work, assassinated. Martin Luther King Jr., assassinated. He was just 39 when he was killed, and he left behind his wife and 4 children. There was great fruit that came out of the civil rights movement that led to our country becoming that more perfect union, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So what is the Civil Rights Act of 1964? I'm just going to read some portions that I found from the U.S. Department of Labor. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is the nation's benchmark civil rights legislation, and it continues to resonate in America. Passage of the act ended the application of Jim Crow laws, which had been upheld by the Supreme Court in the 1896 case Plessy versus Ferguson, in which the court held that racial segregation purported to be separate but equal was constitutional. These acts benefited African Americans, but not just African Americans, but all Americans, including Korean Americans. The following year, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 was passed, but there weren't that many Korean Americans in the United States at that time because of the exclusion laws that were in place. Up until 1882, Chinese that had come afterwards, excluded. After 1907, Gentlemen's Agreement Act, now Japanese were excluded. And after 1924 Immigration Act, all Asians were excluded from coming to the United States. So after the 1965 Immigration Act, so much has changed. So when I was looking at the ACR 111, it said here, whereas the number of Korean ancestry living in the United States has grown to more than 1,700,000, representing more than a 67-fold increase since 1960. It's as a result of this Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 that I don't know if it would have came about as quickly had it not been for the civil rights movement that have paved the way for so many. And of course, it also paved the way for one of my favorite Korean Americans, including my parents and my father, Dr. Jongdae Kim, who arrived in the early 1970s. And like my father, Korean Americans have made important contributions in California in the fields of finance, technology, law, medicine, education, sports, media, the arts, the military, government. And I have a lot of Korean American friends, and I can say that they're so good at what they do in all their fields. So many of them are leaders, so many of them are making a great influence for others and for the state of California. So is there an intersection between Korean American Day and Martin Luther King Day? I think so. And what an opportunity on Martin Luther King Day to really honor Martin Luther King and all those who helped pave the way for all Americans, including Korean Americans. Did this video help you recognize and appreciate Martin Luther King Day and see a connection between Martin Luther King Day and Korean American Day? If so, go ahead and hit that like. If you want to hear more stories about Korean American experiences, be sure to subscribe. In an upcoming video, I will be talking about a Korean American Studies course that I've authored in the Anaheim Union High School District. This is Dr. Jeff from Ed Family, signing out and wishing you the best Martin Luther King Day.